Ollie, it's honestly so bad. Like, whoever says that he's balanced, they're exaggerating. This guy, it's probably C tier at best, and I am not kidding. So, because of that, today I will be suggesting a couple changes to Ollie, because otherwise he will eventually fall into the D tier even. So, hope you enjoy, and let's start with, I would say, the first problem, which is his basic attack. And there are at least 4 big problems with it, and I am not joking. To start off, the angle of the attack, it's so ridiculously tiny that it's actually a little bit hard to aim the attack at medium range, which never really happened to me with any other brawler, just to show how thin his attack is. Secondly, your projectile speed, it's annoyingly slow, and this is even worse considering that he has a short range. While he has, I think, the same range as Sanya's Buster, your projectile speed, at least it feels generally slower, which in my eyes it's a very big problem because it practically makes your range smaller in a certain way. Finally, your reload time, it's horrible. And I don't think I need to tell you that he deals little to no damage. Ollie, it's the second brawler to take more than 10 hits to kill a tick. Actually, according to this short, it takes, 40 hits if I'm remembering correctly? Only Colette was able to do that at her release, and she received emergency buffs. So, I am convinced that Ollie will receive something as well because he is not gonna survive for much more, just based on a gadget and a star power really. Then we also have the problem of Ollie's super. It's just really weird. So if you interrupt the dash, which is a pretty decent dash, nothing too great honestly, but reasonable enough. If you interrupt the dash, you interrupt the entire super. But if you already did the dash and you already see that the symbol of the shockwave coming, you cannot interrupt the shockwave. So if Ollie ends up being really close to you, because he is a fast brawler, it's somewhat unlikely for you to dodge the super. But if you have like a gadget, a super, or any sort of way to escape the Ollie super, you're fine. Like, you're good to go. Just run away, live your life. It's easy to dodge super. The radius, it's so small. I am pretty sure it has the same radius as a Jackie attack. Like, at least it feels like that. Not to mention that the delay, it's honestly just torture. Like, if you want to try to make a more aggressive play, guess what? It's impossible. The super unload time, it's just too massive. You just can't deal with that. It's absolutely horrible. And then we have the other side of the coin, which is you have a really good star power, which is the second star power, and then you also have both gadgets are really good, honestly. Personally, I prefer the second one because it almost acts like a stun, which is really nice, honestly. So yeah, Ollie needs some changes, and the first thing that I want to see, it is his basic attack. So, to start off, the damage of the basic attack will be increased from 1700 at max level to 2000. There is just no reason at all for Ollie to deal that small amount of damage. Like, all tanks, with no exception, can deal tremendous amount of damage either at close or medium range, and Ollie just simply does not deal damage. Like, in any scenario, he just doesn't, which it just feels so weird. Like, what is he meant to do in the game besides pulling out a lucky taunt? Doesn't make any sense to me. And speaking of taunt, we need to talk about the super, which is another really big problem. The dash, it's fine as it is. I will keep the dash exactly the same thing, but then it comes all of the rest. So I don't think that just a plain buff would fix anything, because a plain buff could very easily make the super extremely overwhelming. So to fix this, your super now, instead of having that 1.5 seconds delay, it deploys instantly. So you do the dash and immediately taunt enemies. But to compensate such buff, now the taunt duration will be reduced from 2.5 seconds to only 1.5 seconds. So now the taunt will be a lot shorter, but it will actually help you to make slightly more aggressive plays, because you will immediately explode, give the taunt, and get the value immediately. Just a smaller amount of value, but considering how wanky the super is, I feel like it's extremely fair. Other than that, the super would also deal 2000 damage, just to also keep it consistent with your basic attack, because I don't really understand why would the super deal less damage than the basic attack. If anything, it should deal more damage because it's a super. So that's all I would really do. And to the super, finally, the cost of the super would actually be increased from 5 hits to 6 hits. So the only thing that I haven't really talked about yet is that you can somewhat pull a bit of a super cycle. But the thing is, it's extremely unrealistic for that to happen in a normal match. So this actually gives Ollie the ability to be slightly a bit of a noob stomper, which I don't really want Ollie to be that type of brawler. So this supercharge rate nerf will also compensate the massive super buff, because the music explosion happen instantaneously, because you can actually start the super earlier by using your super against a wall. This means that you could get your super instantaneously in case someone tried to play aggressive on you. So it's only fair for the super to also cost more, because now the super also has a very good defensive value. So it just feels more balanced in my opinion. And now finally we have the star powers and gadgets. Gadgets don't change a thing. Honestly, they are both equally good and they are both somewhat balanced. As for the star powers, they will be slightly different. Now, the second star power, instead of being applied as soon as you use the super, it would now only be applied after the explosion. And because the explosion now happens instantaneously, it's practically at the end of the dash. This just makes so that you cannot use your dash recklessly. You would still need to maybe try to dodge bullets, so you cannot just blindly use your super against any enemy. This could kill the star power a little bit, but then you think it's 4000 shields. They will always be helpful. Then we have the first star power, which just simply make it last longer, like Sprout star power does. I don't really understand why do they make these get close to the wall, but then don't make the stat increase last longer, like with Sprout. I don't really understand why. They should definitely do that, because it's a good idea, but the effect needs to last longer. Otherwise, it's just useless. Finally, I want to also give him a Mythic Gear and a Hypercharge. The Mythic Gear would be a very simplistic thing. When you execute your super, the dash knocks enemies back, dealing 1000 damage and also taunting them for 1 second. So now you could use even the dash itself as a little bit of aggression to counter some supers, or to just push people towards your super, because if an enemy gets hit by your super at the beginning, they will actually get pulled towards the end of the super, which will result on them getting hit by the taunt once again. And honestly, I feel like the Mythic Gear would be really strong actually. And finally, give Ollie a brand new Hypercharge, which I would call Aggressive Beat. So as soon as you click the super button, so before you even do the dash, you immediately execute your super. Just the regular one. So as soon as you click on the super, you immediately explode and do the taunt. But your actual super, so the explosion after the dash, will have a 50% larger radius, but it will only stun enemies. So you don't have the taunt on the second super, but you have on the first one, and then just stun everything on a large area. This would make Ollie extremely aggressive because, I mean, you just get that massive stun, which, realistically speaking, the taunt, it's sometimes a disadvantage. So considering that you would also get 25% more shield and more speed and a slight bit of more damage, this would allow your team to just gain control of the map, because a 1.5 second stun, it's no joke, it will hurt the enemy team, and considering that 50% more range, it's a lot, it will be a very strong hypercharge. As for the charge rate, it will cost you 3.33 super, so a 30% charge rate. Considering the charge rate nerf, it will be a slightly longer to take hypercharge, but then you have the tank trait, so it won't really take that long. And there you have it, all of the changes that I want to see to Ollie at some point. Ollie right now, it's just weird, extremely weird. You can't be aggressive at all, and you're not really that much of a tank. So I'm curious to see how Supercell will handle the situation, and I want to hear your opinion. What are your thoughts? Write in the comments down below. If you like the video, do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.